Welcome to Jack's Corner, where conservative values meet national headlines, and truth and reality have a seat at the table. From Louisville, Kentucky, here's your host, Jack Richardson.
Well, welcome back to Jack's Corner, where truth and reality have a seat at the table. In today's world, there is never want for news as evil runs rampant because good sits on their asses. Now, I know that is a gross generalization, but the problem with generalizations is they are usually true. It's just like there is a little bit of truth in all humor, otherwise it wouldn't be funny. Well, there is nothing funny about the good doing nothing, and I'm going to address that in a minute when I talk about how Western inaction has caused most of the problems we face in the world. Remember, evil has no good ideas, just like the Democrat left has no good ideas or solutions. After all, they and evil are one and the same. What would you expect? Then all too often, good sits back and lets the disaster play out, or they lack the courage to do something. So with that, let's get into the topic for today. The failures of Western leaders in dealing with Iran in the Middle East, starting with Jimmy Carter, who created the mess with this and his weak appeasing response to the demands of the radical Islamists. We have had one failed approach to Iran after another. I've said many times, know thy enemy. You must know the character and mentality of those you are dealing with. The Islamists are irrational and demented with a theological and ideological psychosis and a malevolent mindset. This is all reinforced with the false promise of glory and paradise. Well, we've all heard of some of the absurd promises given to Islamic men who die in killing the rest of us, such as a reward of 70 virgins in paradise. Well, I guess that tells you what you need to know about where their head is, at least what I would call a sexual obsession, if not perversion. This is but one of the many indications that this culture is not one to negotiate with. There is no character upon which to build a relationship of mutual respect and trust there. They are a group of psychopaths and sociopaths divorced from valuing life and respecting others' rights to life. They are delusional as to their own worth and strap-on bombs. They live in the moment-to-moment delusion. Frankly, all you need to know about the leaders of Iran and their followers is that they believe and teach their children that it is glorious and of great honor to kill a Jew or an infidel, which, by the way, is you and the rest of the world. Here's the real clincher. Our leaders, both Democrat and Republican, have played the pacifist role toward this country for over 46 years. Trump dismantled it in a few hours. The Democrat Jimmy Carter created the mess. Ronald Reagan was tied up with ending the Cold War with Russia. George H.W. Bush was tied up with Iraq, and that was a big miscalculation. And Bill Clinton had a great opportunity to take out North Korea's nuclear program, but didn't. So then why would we think that he would do anything with Iran? And then he failed to take out Osama bin Laden when he actually had him in the crosshairs. And as a consequence, our Twin Towers came down in New York City. George W. Bush had to deal with the 9/11 debacle and disaster, all because prior administrations failed to do what they should have done, and we lost 3,000 people, or really more, in that terrorist attack. And then Barack Obama gave Iran billions, as did Biden, and the terror continued along with the nuclear program, wherein basically Iran nearly had a nuclear bomb. We were on course to make the same mistake with Iran as Clinton did with North Korea. Shame, 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 shame on us. Folks, so many of the problems we have faced as a nation is because of bad leadership. Now we have a real leader who is protecting our country for once, and the treasonous Democrat left and one delusional Republican want to impeach Trump for protecting the country. Our problems are of our own making. We finally get a great leader for the first time in 50 years, and he gets attacked by those who really should be in jail for treason, if not for their sheer stupidity alone. In just the last 4 months, Trump has done what all leaders before him said was impossible. Don't forget, Biden said the border could not be controlled, and Trump did it in 60 days. Then you have the Iranian situation, which no other president had the courage to confront. Trump took care of it in a matter of hours. This was the most top secret mission I can ever remember. The distraction and fakes we employed fooling the whole world was such that Iran didn't even know that the B-2 bombers were overhead, and they were back over the ocean before they knew what happened. Now, some in Congress condemned Trump, saying that, well, he should have asked the 535 members of Congress for permission to carry out a top secret mission. Folks, half of Congress is filled with traitors like AOC, Bernie Sanders, Hakeem Jeffries, and Chuck Schumer, who cannot be trusted. Seriously, do you really think it possible for 535 people in Congress capable of keeping a secret? Decisions do have consequences. So now the question is, what will your decision be regarding whether to support a real leader and go after those who want to keep our country at risk? You should be blowing up the phones and blowing them off the hook with your calls of condemnation to those in Congress who want to impeach Trump for ridding us of a nuclear danger like Clinton failed to do with North Korea. So now I've told you what the problem is and given you the action plan. It's time for you to raise some hell with your elected leaders and tell them you support Trump, and failure to do so will be met with primaries and expulsion from office in 2026. Now let's build a bit more on the good leadership, what good leadership really looks like. And I want to start with these amazing facts. In May of 2024, 62,000 illegals were allowed into the country by Biden, who told you that nothing could be done. Last May 2025, under President Trump, the border crossings were zero. I tell you, there ought to be mass indictments in prosecutions and trials and jail time for all these people that lied to you. Folks, I truly believe that when you are in high office and you tell these types of overwhelming and consequential lies, you need to go to jail. You see, fixing the border crisis didn't take an act of Congress. It only took the right president to make the difference. By the way, have you ever heard people use the term, it takes an act of Congress to do something? That's a derisive way, basically meaning that it needs to be done, what needs to be done is almost impossible and would take an act of Congress. And why? Because Congress gets nothing done. And if they do, it's never timely. The Democrats lied to you about the border. Surprised? You shouldn't be. I challenge anyone to produce proof of Democrat honesty or truthfulness. Frankly, I'm shocked that a civil war has not broken out to purge the country of the prevaricators who have infected the country and the insurrection they have basically supported in the streets, all encouraged by the Democrats. How much proof does it take to convince a people of the evil of the left? The words and actions of the Democrat left have done everything that should have convinced any normal and cognitively functioning human that the left is a threat to your life, liberty, and happiness. Here's two monstrous lies and reasons why you should never trust a Democrat. They tried to convince you that Biden was mentally fit for office, and nearly half of the country believed them instead of their own eyes. That speaks volumes to the moral depravity in the country when that many people believe and live in a lie. The Democrat left told you that the border was under control and they couldn't do anything about it. They couldn't do anything about the invasion over our southern border without congressional action. Well, expecting Congress to do anything is a safe bet that nothing will get done. And at the very least, not in a timely manner. But just look at the numbers. 1 year ago, like I said, in May, over 62,000 crossed the border. And 1 year later, zero under President Trump. So they lied to you that it needed congressional action. You need to be really mad about that and take some action and start making some calls and writing some letters and say no more. No congressional action was basically needed, and the Democrat left has yet to explain that. Can any of your Democrat left friends explain it or justify their continued support for pathological liars on the left? So what is your action plan? I've made it quite simple for you. I've pointed out two monstrous lies the Democrats have told you in just the last 12 months, which cannot be explained away. You need to take these two examples and challenge your family, your friends, and neighbors, and ask them why would they continue to support the Democrat Party given the unending trail of lies that they tell. They have proven themselves untrustworthy. Fear of losing a friendship or a relationship is not a valid excuse. The Bible is very clear in instructing us that you should not be unequally yoked. After all, light has nothing in common with darkness. If you can recognize and love the truth, then why associate with those who relish and love the lie? Remember, the Democrat left tells you that truth is relative and essentially there is no truth. Well, think about this. By the same token, if there is no truth, then there is no such thing as a lie. That's how they justify all the evil and the corruption that they do and the lies that they tell. There is no greater freedom than between your ears, and that is called your mental autonomy. When you have strong border walls there, you will be immune from being defriended or canceled or censored. You don't need those kinds of associations. Now, the way back for our country is to end the enablement of those who are destroying it by your association with people who live in deception and support those who lie. Let them feel the consequences of their own cognitive dissonance. It's time for excommunication of these types in your life. Just as it is good to eat healthy and keep bad things from going into your body, it's likewise good to be separated from the toxins that enter your mind. A liar has nothing to offer you but harm. You cannot prosper with liars, and neither can a country. Let's start cleaning up this mess we have created by toxically tolerating liars in our colleges, universities, media, and the government. To live free is to live in truth. Demand the truth of yourself and those around you, and start today. Now, I want to talk about Western inaction and how it has caused most of the world disasters in the last 100 years. Now, I know that is a pretty shocking statement, but you see, evil happens when good does nothing, and the West is at fault. And I will develop this for you. Now, history is the most important course that any student could take, and it should be required. There's a reason it has been abolished and or revised, as it serves evil. However, in revisiting the past, it immediately becomes evident how the West's failure has brought about the biggest tragedies over the last 100 years. Let's take a few examples of how the West has enabled evil in all the atrocities around the world. First of all, let's go back to 1917, where the West had an opportunity to prop up a more Western government in Russia after the fall of the Russian Tsar. It lasted about 9 months and then fell. It had no support from the West. Communism, of course, which plagues the whole world today, replaced it and replaced the more free government that they had for a short period of time, and shame on us. Consequently, communism over the last 100 years has murdered over 120 million souls. Well, shame on the West again. We've been blessed by God in so many ways, and yet we turn around and do things like that. We miss these types of opportunities to keep evil at bay. Another example is leading up to World War II, the famous pacifist Neville Chamberlain, then the Prime Minister of England, appeased Hitler. Hitler had no intention of abiding by any peace deal. Again, another Western fool made decisions leading to disaster. Once in the war, we had the opportunity with General Patton to march into Moscow. Franklin Roosevelt, a socialist, wouldn't let him do it. And a decade later, Russia had the nuclear bomb and we entered an arms race and the Cold War. Another Western failure. In 1949, we failed to support Chiang Kai-shek against the incursion of the communist revolutionary Mao Zedong. And he was the one who took over China. Mao was and is to this day the world's greatest mass murderer with an estimated 80 million dead. Now China is our greatest enemy, and they have surpassed us in having the largest navy in the world and the second largest economy. Folks, we financed it all with our trade policies and the erroneous theory that such trade with China would make them more democratic. What fools we were and have been. As with China prior to World War II, Japan was building its military off the steel from the dismantling of the overhead transit system in New York City. And we sold them all that steel. And what did they do with it? They turned it into armament. Likewise, China has built its military off of U.S. trade dollars. And then we condemned Trump for imposing tariffs. In 1962, Russia was placing missiles in Cuba. But prior to that, we had an opportunity under the Monroe Doctrine to defeat Castro, and Cuba would have been free today. The consequences was not only the Cuban Missile Crisis, but the spread of communism and socialism throughout South America and Central America. Shame on us again. The Vietnam War was another catastrophe. With constant bombing of Hanoi in North Vietnam, the war would have been won and early on, but that was not in the interest of the military-industrial complex, nor was it cogent with our intelligence services, which grossly overestimated Russia's military strength, which we have now seen in the Ukraine situation. And as a result, over 58,000 of our men died, and tens of thousands had to live with devastating injuries. And the Communist North took over the South anyway. We shamefully dishonored the American blood that was spilled. It was a needless and humiliating defeat for the United States. And I believe President Johnson is burning in hell for the decisions he made and how he used our American men to further the military-industrial complex and other financial interests. It was a forever war with no intentions to win it. President Carter allowed radical Islamists to take over Iran, and he betrayed the Shah of Iran, who was an ally of the U.S. Consequently, our embassy was taken over and the personnel held hostage for over 400 days. This was the start of state-sponsored worldwide terrorism and Iran's march to a nuclear bomb. They don't want to just have a bomb, they want to use it, folks. We allowed this situation, we created it, and we have spent the last 46 years negotiating with people whose reason for being is to destroy the West. President Clinton had the opportunity to take out North Korea's nuclear development. He was a coward and failed to do what was necessary, and now North Korea has around 50 nuclear weapons and missiles to deliver them to our West Coast. Clinton was too busy having sex in the Oval Office with an intern, but once again, the American voter is not very discerning. President Bush went into Iraq at great cost based on the notion that they had unverified weapons of mass destruction. Our intelligence failed there as well, and we eliminated a counterbalancing enemy of Iran. Frankly, we knew there were no weapons, but it was just too lucrative not to fight, given all the ordnance that would have to be expended in the war. Another example is President Carter sold the Panama Canal to Panama for $1. And by the time President Trump got into the office, the Chinese were in control of both ends of the canal. Again, Trump ended the problem that was created by another weak president. Another one here is Iran was days away from a nuclear bomb, and so many in this country were wringing their hands as to what to do. This is a simple answer. Bomb them and get rid of the nuclear program. Eliminate a threat that would have devastating consequences on a global basis. Well, once again, Trump fixed the mistake of past presidents, and he did it in just a matter of hours. So as you look at the history of all the disasters in just the last 100 years that could have been averted, we find the root cause in how the West was ineffective in responding and how they failed to act when necessary. Let's give President Trump the latitude and the support he needs to make America great again. He's already proven that the solution is not that difficult. It just takes some courage, brains, and guts to do it, and Trump has all of them. Well, okay, that's it for now, folks. Thanks for joining me, and until next time, I'm Jack Richardson for Jack's Corner.